to another episode of Quarantined Coaches. We are in the ACC with Clemson and Coach Brad LeCroy. How are you, sir?
Doing great, Josh. How are you?
I am staying busy with guys like you. What are you doing to stay busy?
Just a little home office work, a little homeschooling, a lot of outdoor activities, wiffle ball games in the neighborhood, a little fishing, a lot of home improvements.
Who were you guys supposed to play this past weekend?
We had Pittsburgh at home this past weekend. It was going to be a big weekend at Clemson. We had a spring football game on Saturday, which is usually one of our bigger crowds of the year when they have 70,000 people for a spring football game, and then we play the baseball game afterwards. So we usually pack it out, have 7,000, 7,500 for that game. So the weather was beautiful. It was in the upper 70s, low 80s. Would have been a fantastic weekend.
But I made a suggestion to another ACC coach yesterday who was going through what this weekend was supposed to look like. You guys need to trash the schedule. Delete it off your phone and stop getting alerts as to where you're supposed to be. You're just torturing yourselves right now.
Yeah, I agree. But it's one of those things that, in the back of your mind, you're still, hey, where we would have been this weekend? Who are we playing? Who are we playing midweek on a Tuesday night? Obviously, because we play some great midweek games with all the schools in state. Play a great home and home with the University of Georgia, which is an hour and 15 minutes away. So it's neat just to think about who you might have played that night or that weekend. And this coming weekend, we were supposed to be traveling to Louisville for a big series. So it's tough to get off your mind.
Let's jump in. Let's get away from this virus stuff. Glad to hear that you and the family are doing well. From the baseball side of things, you are one of your hats that you wear at Clemson is the recruiting coordinator. D1Baseball.com actually ranked you as one of the best recruiting coordinators in the country in recent years. Who taught you how to recruit, and what are some of the keys to being successful in that role?
Well, I've been fortunate to work with some really good people along in my career. Two guys that have really taught me a lot, would be the guy I played for and coached with is Jack Leggett, Hall of Fame former coach here at Clemson. One guy who had a huge impact on my career when I came back to Clemson in my first stint as a volunteer would be Kevin O'Sullivan, the head coach at the University of Florida. Taught me a ton about recruiting, evaluation and communication and relationships. And I enjoy it. I love it. I love, during the summer recruiting, it's a grind for all of us, but I love it. I enjoy going to the field and watching games and watching kids compete and, forming that relationship, with those guys. And, I learned a lot from, when Monty came on here at Clemson, some different ideas, and they worked for us. Very fortunate to be at some places that the product is easy to sell as far as the baseball program, the university, the academics, the community, the facilities, all those things that come into recruiting. But along the ways, the people I've learned from, they've been fantastic.
What are some of the keys to being a successful recruiting coordinator?
I think first of all, you got to be willing to fail. I remember my first job at a Division II school at Anderson College, it's Anderson University now. The head coach I worked for, Joe Miller, was outstanding. He just, I was 23 years old, and he just let me go. And he said, "You take it, you do what you want to." And, I failed a lot, but it was great because I learned from the failures that certain things I had to do differently, the way I communicated with kids, the type of kid that I could get there. Maybe I had to scale it down a little bit and go after guys who were interested in playing Division II ball and playing at Anderson. So I think the biggest thing, that was a huge thing of learning from things I did wrong and learning from my mistakes. But I think you got to be willing to think outside the box. You got to be creative. You got to separate yourself from from the other programs you're recruiting against. And here at Clemson, fortunately, we're able to recruit on a national level. And we recruit against some great programs. I mean, we're battling the best every time we talk to a kid. And so you got to figure out what separates your program from those other programs and where that kid fits into your program, when it comes to development, versatility. Is he going to fit in at Clemson? Clemson's a unique place. It's a college town. Without the students here, Clemson's about 12,000 people, which is a great thing to sell. I mean, it's totally different than some of the schools in the bigger cities. But it benefits us because that's why we're in the top 10 in, attendance every year, because we play on a Tuesday night against whoever. Going to the baseball game's the thing to do. The Braves aren't in town or a minor league team in town. These people, there's going to be 5,000 or 6,000 people there on a Tuesday night. And it's one thing that we can sell that's different than a lot of places we compete against.
I'm glad you say it's something that we can sell, because being a recruiting coordinator, in some senses, there is a little bit of salesmanship to it, right?
Yeah, there is. Absolutely. I mean, you got to sell your product. It's just like being a car salesman or selling real estate.
Is that weird to do, though, when you're talking about 15, 16, 17-year-old kid and you're trying to, make a sale to them so that it gets to the parents and then you can sell them? I mean, it's kind of a weird situation to be in, or you just kind of get used to it over time?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is. But, and especially nowadays in our profession, when these young men are committing when they're 14, 15 years old, I know the game's changed and recruiting changed. I mean, I remember when I was 14 and 15 years old, I had no clue what I was going to do, in the next month, rather than, 4 years down the road where I was going to go to school. But it's the way recruiting's gone. And you just got to know what you're selling, right? And you got to make sure that person and that family, the parents, are going to fit into your culture at your program and your university. And sometimes they don't, and sometimes they do. And we're fortunate here that, we feel like our guys have great experiences. They love Clemson. It's a great place to go to school, not just play baseball, but the falls are awesome because of the football we have going on here and what Coach Sweeney's done. The academics, we're a top 20 public institution in the country. With all that, though, like all the other schools, it's gotten so competitive to get into school here that our academics continue to rise, which is great for everybody.
This is interesting to me. I just kind of want to stick here because it is an angle that we really haven't gotten to discuss, is some of the salesmanship in, recruiting, no matter what school or sport it is, but at the college level. If I'm a car salesman, every year there's new cars, right? There's new styles, there's new models, blah, blah, blah. And I guess at a college, right, grades change, financial aid packages change, the town changes. Like, how much do you feel like you got to kind of stay on top of what's happening now in the college and in the city so that you can be giving the best, pitch to a family or to a kid?
Yeah, I think you gotta keep your material you use up to date. We're fortunate here. We've got a great, internal office of video programmers that the social media content and the videos they make about not only baseball or athletics, but the campus life, the academics, the community life in the city, in the town of Clemson. They're always up to date and they're changing. So it gives our guys, our recruits, the people that are interested in Clemson, it gives them a feel of what's going on here always. But, I think like you referenced like new cars. I mean, baseball is the same way. I mean, new facilities. We moved into a new players facility 4 years ago. It's awesome, one of the best in the country. But we got to continue to update our stuff because, Florida's moving into a new stadium. Mississippi State just built a brand new, beautiful stadium. We just redid our hitting facility, put $1 million into it last fall. But you got to continue to do those kind of things because that's important, not only in recruiting, and to the prospects and the parents, but also into your development of your players and your team. I mean, it's a lot about recruiting. I mean, it is, but once you get them on campus, you got to develop them. And if you have the facilities and the resources and the support staff to develop them and make them better player and people, that's key in the recruiting process.
To you, what's the most difficult positional player to recruit, like the position?
That's a good one. I think that it all depends. I mean, I think you can go anywhere, to be honest with you. I think the biggest struggle, probably not evaluating and getting the guy, is probably the catching position. Because our philosophy here at Clemson is we're going to take one catcher a year, in our recruiting classes. The problem is a lot of times, we're recruiting at a high level, and if you sign that guy, and we want the best players in the country to come here, obviously, just like a lot of other programs. But if that guy's too good and you lose him in the draft, now you got to replace him. When it comes to pitching, I mean, you're going to sign 4 to 7 arms a year. Infielders, you're going to sign 2 or 3. Outfielders, you're going to sign 1 to 3, depending on what your depth chart looks at. So I think not evaluating and developing, but from a depth chart and a scholarship roster management, the catching is the toughest one, because you want to get the best player, but as it cycles one a year, you want to make sure that hopefully that guy's going to show up, so you don't have a gap in those catchers. We've been fortunate here where we've hit on a lot of catchers, and they've showed up and they've been great players for us.
Aside from recruiting coordinator, another hat you have is the hitting coach. How would you define the term plate approach, and what is the approach that you like to teach at Clemson?
Yeah, well, the one thing I can say is I'm fortunate to work for a head coach who's got an offensive background, and Monty's very involved in the hitting, does a great job. We communicate every day, and our director of player development, Ben Paulson, who's a former big leaguer that played here, he's super sharp and obviously was very talented playing the big leagues with the Rockies. So we have a really good plan. I mean, when it comes to approach, to be honest with you, we talk more approach than we do mechanics, especially in the season. And we try to keep it as simple as possible, with all the verbiage and everything going on in today's world. It's crazy the amount of information out there, and some of it's really good. It's really good. But when we talk about approach, we talk about the first 2 strikes are ours. We're going to do damage, absolute damage. We're looking for our pitch. We change the field of play, from the opposite gap to the pull foul line. And then when you get to 2 strikes, it's about competing. It's about competing, and you're going to change the field the other way, where you go to the pull gap to the opposite field, the foul line, and you're going to back the ball up a little bit on the plate. But in the first 2 strikes, we're always taking our best tack, and we're going to do damage. And we'll change a little bit when it comes to scouting report against some of the arms we face. But our guys have done a great job of buying into the approach. But the number one thing is we want to get our best hack off in the first 2 strikes, no doubt. But it's about pitch selection, swinging at good pitches, and making great swing decisions. That's one big thing we're on here, and we chart that a ton. And at the end of the day, the numbers don't lie. The guys who make the best swing decisions, they're your best hitters, 100%.
There's a lot of things that go into an approach, and at your level, a hitter's approach is extremely fluid, right? From pitch to pitch, from at bat to at bat. I mean, it's constantly changing. At the high school level, though, looking at kids coming up who are looking for some advice, like what would be just a very simplified general approach that would be good for, maybe a kid who's starting his varsity career to take to the plate?
Yeah, I mean, I think the way we simplify things, I think it can work at a high school level, to be honest with you. I think you got to have a plan. Obviously, your best swing is a swing that creates a ball in the middle of the field. So if you're thinking gap to gap, and no strikes, one strike. I'm looking for a certain pitch in a certain zone, and take your best swing. You know, I think one thing that people are, sometimes we get confused on is people want to say, hey, hit early, don't get the 2 strikes, which is true. The numbers show you that you do most of your damage less than 2 strikes. But at the end of the day, half your at-bats are going to be with 2 strikes. So you cannot be scared to hit with 2 strikes. Doesn't matter how good of a hitter you are, right? You're going to half your bats, I think 48% of your bats are going to be with 2 strikes. So you're going to have a 2-strike approach. And 2-strike hitting is all about competing, maybe make a physical adjustment, whether you get on the plate, up in the box, you choke up, you change your field of play. But I think that's one of the biggest things is guys, they have a fear of getting the 2 strikes. But you can't, because it's going to happen. It's going to happen. And I think that's one thing I would tell even a younger person is, hey, no strikes, 1 strike, you get your best hack on. You're going to have a 2-strike approach because it's going to happen. You might have a bad umpire that day where he's got a wide zone and you take some pitches and now you're
bad umpire. Come on, that never happened.
Hey, that's why a runner on third, less than 2 outs. You get it done early. You don't let the umpire affect the at bat.
No doubt. What's rule number 1 for the Clemson Tigers hitters? When we go into the cage and we see the rules up on the wall, it's not put your helmet on. What is it?
Be prepared to work today. We're big. We're into the analytics. We're into the development. We have a lot of plans, but we don't cookie cut our guys. We kind of group our guys. We use the bat sensors. We use the heavy bat program. We hit a ton off machines. We use the Rapsoda, the TrackMan. But our guys, the biggest thing we tell our guys, be open-minded, because we're going to try some things to get them better. It's worked, but we don't cookie cut. Our 4-hole hitter is not the same hitter as our 9-hole hitter. So why should we try to make both of them swing the same? One's 6'3", he's left-handed, 220 pounds. The other one's 5'10", and can run like a deer. So we don't cookie cut. They're open-minded. They work hard. And we try a lot of things, and if it works for the guy, we're going to stay with it. If it doesn't, hey, we're not closed-minded here. We're gonna move to something that's going to help that guy.
I really love that, because I think with young hitters, they're not patient enough to try things, right? To figure out if they work or not. It's like, hey, I want you to try this today, give it a few at-bats. But if it doesn't work by, 6 or 9 swings into game action, then they give it up and they want to go back to their old ways. I think that's really big. Do you think, though, hitting has become too analytical?
I think so, a little bit. The great thing about all the numbers, the sensors, the TrackMan, the Rapsoda, the great thing about it gives you facts when you're trying to teach a young man, something about his swing. Especially, we use the bat sensors a lot, and, trying to tell guys that their attack angle's too steep. And these guys nowadays, they're smart enough. They know enough to be dangerous, right? Which is a good thing, because they're invested in their swing. They're invested in their skill set. So by using those things, it's able to, what we're telling them as coaches, it helps us, hey, relay that information. Hey, we keep telling you on the field that your attack angle and your swing's a little bit too steep. Hey, check out the numbers here on the DK sensor. It's showing you that. Once they buy into that and they see it, they're visual. They want to see everything. And now you throw the video in there with their metrics on it. They're like, huh, coach, I get it. I understand now. I get it. And that light bulb goes off, and they buy into it. But at the end of the day, you're right. I mean, it's about swinging at good pitches and squaring the ball up.
Do you think that your lineup, or the Clemson lineup, would be significantly less productive without the technology?
Yeah, I don't think it would be a huge difference, to be honest with you.
Right.
You know, I think some of our guys have really, really improved from it. And then, you know, guy we had a couple years ago, Seth Beer, who's National Player of the Year, first-round draft pick of the Astros, going to play in the big leagues for a long time. You know, guy can hit. You know,
Right.
the bat sensors and the TrackMan, you know, did it make him a little bit better as far as swing decisions, hot and cold zones? Absolutely. But did it make him National Player of the Year? No, right?
Right.
He can hit.
Are we losing that player that doesn't wear batting gloves and doesn't ever look at a screen? You know, that just has a bat, put me in the box, see the ball, hit the ball, crush the ball. Like, is that a dying breed, that kind of player?
A little bit. I just think because of the way society is and Instagram and Twitter and all that kind of stuff, I think it just, you know, that's the way these guys are in the recruiting. It starts in high school, and it's the way it comes up. And as coaches, you know, that's why we have to be prepared for it when they get to our campus, you know, and in professional baseball, they're doing at the lowest, at the rookie ball level, all the way up to the big leagues. So it's something that's helped baseball. There's no question. I think it can help in development, but I guess go back to it and say, hey, the guys who compete, make good swing decisions, and square the ball up are your best players. You know, it's factual.
You talk about preparing guys for that next level, making that jump, whatever level that is. Again, one of the hats that you wear is working with infielders at Clemson. What's something that young infielders, high school infielders, you often see them doing that needs adjusting right when they get to college?
I think the number one thing is you know, moving your feet. I think these guys, and a lot of it is the way that they're trained as far as when we go to these showcases to evaluate, you know, the guys throw across from shortstop, and what do? We throw up a radar gun, and the guy throws it 98 miles an hour across the diamond, but it goes 4 rows in the stands, right? It's got great arm strength. That's awesome, right?
Right.
But if it goes 4 rows in the stands, the guy's safe, and he's going to second base. And I think that's the biggest thing that when we get guys, and I think it's probably all across amateur baseball, that the more accurate you are with your arm and you move your feet and you follow your throw and you got good direction with your feet, the more consistent you are going to be as a player. I tell our guys all the time, hey, listen, we have our fundamentals, we have our technique that I'm going to teach you. But at the end of the day, if that guy's out at first base, that's all that matters.
Right.
That's all that matters, right? It doesn't matter if you were supposed to V-cut that ball and get around it, but you ended up maybe filming it on the wrong side of your body. If he's out, it doesn't matter, right?
You set me up, because I haven't asked anybody this question, but I was coming at you with it because there's too many pitching guys out there. They're just, for some reason, they like to get on here and talk. I don't get enough infield guys here. Are you a V-cut guy, or are you a get around, throw on the run guy? Don't tell me it depends on the ground ball either, please.
I'm a V-cut guy.
Yes.
I like the V-cut. I do think it depends on the player, to be honest with you.
Okay, I can accept that. I can accept that more than the ground ball. Go ahead and explain.
I do think it depends on the player. You know, for example, you know, in the past coming up, I was more of a, hey, we got to get around everything and do it this way. And then we have a kid that was a first rounder of the A's last year, Logan Davidson. But when he got on campus, he loved his backhand, and he loved the V-cut with his backhand, even if a ball was just a couple feet to his right. And I never had someone like this, but he had the best backhand that I've ever coached, and it was automatic. And he had a really good arm, but he had an accurate arm. So he trusted it, and that was the biggest thing. I wasn't going to change him and tell him he had to get around every single ball, because that's what I wanted him to do. When he was an elite talent, and obviously it shows, he was a first rounder, and fielded, you know, 980 as a college shortstop, which is remarkable. So I think it depends on each guy.
Why in general do you prefer a V cut over get around the ball and throw on the run?
I just think it's puts you in a better position to field the baseball, and it's easier on your feet to transition to throw the ball to first.
Simple.
You know, 100%. That's my philosophy on it. Now, some kids, you know, you might have a guy that doesn't have good enough feet and good enough hands to be able to do it, so you're going to have to adjust with him. It goes back kind of like to our hitting philosophy, where we're not going to cookie cut guys. If you're really strong at this, then we're going to go with this. If you need to improve on this, then we'll improve on it. But for you able to make these plays, we're going to go with what your skill set allows you to do. And that's coaching. That's what coaching's about.
It drives me nuts to watch IO sets or showcase fungos, and everything's about, you know, slow roller or get around and throw on the run. Like, where's the V cut at? You know, right. I want to see the plant, get yourself going in the right direction, throw. So I'm glad.
It's all
page. Huh?
Infield play is all about angles and momentum. That's what it's about.
How's your fungo game?
It's good. It's good. Yeah. I feel like you can handle a fungo pretty good.
Yeah.
We have competitions on the staff all the time. You know,
I was going to say, you guys get at it in fungo golf?
Not really. We let the players do that. The pitchers, you know, they got all the downtime. They play the fungo golf, but you know,
catcher pops. How are those?
Do what?
Your catcher pops?
Yeah, we can do them. We don't do them in infield, outfield. You know, we kind of quit doing those a couple of years ago when our backstop's pretty close to the plate, and one of our older fans got injured a couple of years ago, so we kind of shut that down. But it's fun. We compete on Thursday nights, especially when we go on the road to practice at places as coaches. We compete with the fungos and things like that, so it's good.
You mentioned earlier some real high-profile names that you've played for, coached for, been around in Vanderbilt's Coach Corbin, Florida's Coach O'Sullivan, and then at Clemson, Coach Leggett and Coach Lee. What's a shared characteristic of those four guys that has made them great head coaches?
I think the first thing is there's two things that stand out to me. All of them are ultra competitive. You know, they're going to go over and beyond to put their teams or their players in the best position to succeed and win at the highest level in championships. And their teams always compete, and they're tough. They're going to win games in numerous ways. You know, I think that's the biggest thing. And then they're all great communicators when it comes to their players, their staffs, recruiting, just everything they do. They're great communicators. They're great leaders. You know, people want to get behind them and run through a wall for them. And I think that's those guys. That's what I feel like they all have in common. You know, I was very fortunate to play at Clemson and play with some great players, but you think about the staff that I played for, with Coach Leggett being the head coach, Coach Corbin, you know, being the assistant, and then Sully, Coach O'Sullivan being the pitching coach. I mean, what a great staff that was, and be able to learn from those guys, and then be able to come back and coach with Coach Leggett and Sully as a volunteer, and learn when I was 23 years old as a young guy for 3 years. And then going away and coaching at Western Carolina for 2 years and Tennessee for 3 years, and then coming back to Clemson and coaching with Coach Leggett for another, 5 years, and then being able to coach with Monty the past 5 years and learn from him. And just been very fortunate and blessed the places I've been to be surrounded by, great coaches, but also great people. They're awesome people. They're fun to be around, and they're always willing to learn.
I'm sure you've learned a million things from that group alone, not to mention all the other people you've been around. From that group of four there, is there something that stands out kind of that you've learned maybe from each one of them? Like, what's the one thing, if I said pick one thing from each of those guys that you really took away, would you be able to break that down?
Yeah, I think the first thing from Coach Leggett is just organization. He was super organized when it comes to everything when it comes to, office structure, from practice planning to details on little things to rundowns, pickoffs, the things you don't think about, but things that could end up causing you winning or losing a ball game late in the game. That was one thing that, as a player underneath him, we practiced extremely hard. He was very demanding, but the one thing we were prepared for anything that happened in that game. Now, whether we executed or not, that's, sometimes we did, sometimes we didn't, but we were prepared for it as a player. I think that's one thing that stuck out to me is you got to be prepared for situations when they come up. When it comes to Corbs and Sully, the intensity, the attention to detail, the competitiveness those guys had was amazing. Those guys were two of the most intense people, to be around, but it was because, they wanted to win. They wanted to win so bad. And obviously you can see that as head coaches, they're great leaders of their programs, and they both won national championships. And then Monty's an unbelievable communicator and motivator. Hopefully, the things I've learned from him, one day if I'm a head coach, some of the things that he uses to motivate, the players is outstanding. The one thing I give Monty credit about too, Monty is very, very open-minded as far as ideas from his staff. I hear stories about some head coaches that you're going to do it this way every time. They don't change a lot. Andrew and I, the pitching coach, Andrew C. and I are very fortunate to work for a guy like Monty who, he takes our ideas and he'll run with them. He'll let us go. He lets us do our job when it comes to coaching on the field, recruiting, managing the roster and things like that. But he's open-minded and we have all kinds of ideas. We'll try them. And I think that's great because I've been with some guys and I hear stories about where, some head coaches that are very successful and hey, their way works, right? But they don't like change. And I think that's one great thing about Monty. He is so open-minded and we try a lot of good things. A lot of things have benefited us by changing some things that we've done on our team.
So let's have a little fun then here before I let you go. We're going to pretend you are the head coach, and you got an all-star team of assistant coaches. You got Monty, you got Sully, you got Corbin, you got Leggett, okay? Who, give them their job titles. Who's the hitting guy? Who's the pitching guy? The recruiting? Who's who?
Okay. Sully's going to be the pitching coach for sure because he's the only one that's a pitching guy.
Okay, easy.
But he's going to do the pitching and he's going to do the catching because he's a catcher at UVA coming up. Does a fabulous job. Monty's gonna be the hitting guy.
Okay.
Coach Leggett's going to be the infield base running coordinator. Okay. Corbs is going to be the outfield defensive strategy. I'm going to title him as the recruiting coordinator, but we're all going to do it together. We're going to have the best recruiting staff in America.
Okay. And now you get to pull in one special anybody you want. Who's the volley?
I'm going to go with our pitching coach, Andrew C., because he's like my best friend. So we're going to have a good time in the office.
Favoritism.
Yeah.
Love it. Coach LeCroy, thank you very much for doing this today, man. Really interesting, different, and fun conversation. So I appreciate you hopping on here with us.
You got it. Thanks for having me, Josh. I appreciate it.